Hi everyone. Welcome everyone to WeHi's 2024 International Women's Day event. I'm Sejal Kendall, Acting Head of Strategy and Planning at WeHi, and my pronouns are she, her. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that today we're on the unceded land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to elders past and present and recognise that we have much to learn from the oldest living generations of scientists, teachers, artists and engineers who used and cared for the land on which WeHi operates at Kew, Bundoora, Parkville and Elizabeth Street. The Wurundjeri people take their name from the Woiwurrung language word Warren, meaning the managum, Eucalyptus viminalis, which is common along Birrarung, Yarra River, and Jerry, the grub which is found in or near the tree. Wurundjeri are the Witchetty grub people, and their ancestors have lived on this land for millennia. It's my honour to introduce to you today our speaker, Dr. Ruwangi Fernando. Dr. Fernando is an accomplished IT expert and AI specialist with strong experience in academic, industry, and consulting. She's a passionate advocate for gender equity in STEM, especially addressing the intersectional challenges faced by women of colour. She was recognised for her efforts and awarded a STEM Women Changemaker Award by the Australian Academy of Science and was recognised by on the Victorian Multicultural Honour Roll in 2023. Dr. Fernando founded STEM Sisters, a pioneer organisation that empowers STEM women of colour. She also founded iSTEM Co., a research, consulting and talent sourcing company that enables employment for women in STEM, including women of colour and those who are culturally and linguistically diverse. Dr. Fernando's topic today is Embracing Diversity in STEM, a pathway to innovation and inclusivity in Australia. As I reflected on Dr. Fernando's topic for today, I thought about my own life experiences as a woman of colour in STEM. I grew up in Naarm, Melbourne, raised within the culture of my Indian heritage. My parents moved my two siblings and I to Australia when I was 7 years old from a big and close-knit family in the UK for the possibilities and opportunities that Australia would offer. My dad is one of 6 children in his family, and 4 of my aunties lived in the 4 houses next door to ours. So holidays and family events were a blast because we had such a close relationship with my cousins who were of a similar age. So moving to Australia was a pretty big deal. We didn't have that same close network as we did in the UK. And as the daughter of Indian immigrants, I couldn't help but feel awkward without that close-knit family, that familiarity, and that cultural community surrounding us. At home, I experienced the fullness of Indian culture. We ate with our hands, we were spoken to in Gujarati, we went to the temple, and my parents watched Bollywood movies at the loudest volume possible. It was at school that my sense of being different was heightened. I remember walking to catch the bus and having 2 Caucasian kids ride past me on their bike and shout at me in an Indian accent that I should go home and eat some curry. I was stunned. I looked around, even though I was walking alone, because I didn't think that these kids could possibly have been talking to me. And so those seeds of being different, of being other, were sown. From this time, I subconsciously worked to shed my Indianness and do everything possible to assimilate to Australian culture. In doing so, I found myself not really Indian enough to be Indian or Australian enough to be Australian. And so I began distancing myself from my cultural identity. The change was gradual but lasted decades. In my teens, I used skin bleaching creams and wore shades of foundation too light for my skin, probably a consequence of an attempt to whitewash myself as much as appropriate shades for people of colour didn't exist at the time. I started referring to myself as Sejal to make my name sound more Western and more palatable when being introduced to new people. I stopped watching Bollywood movies, I hated wearing Indian clothing, and stopped going to family events. I started eating curry with a spoon. This behaviour that started in my childhood continued well into my adult years. It resulted in living half my life where I actively denounced my ethnicity. And until recently, I felt like I did a pretty good job. I felt white, or at least I didn't really consider myself to be a person of colour. I didn't let any of the microaggressions, mispronouncing my name or misspelling my name bother me, or the questions of, but where are you really from, annoy me. They rolled off me like water off a duck's back. That is until I started taking on more senior roles, and I started feeling that weight of that childhood otherness creeping back into my mind. The slight discomfort when I started noticing myself being the only person of colour in meetings, or worrying what the hiring manager might think when they see my name on a resume. The feeling I have in the pit of my stomach when I see a lack of racial diversity in news articles promoting activities in the sector, sometimes even those from WeHi. The disappointment that First Nations women, women of colour, women with disability, and LGBTQIA+ people are still invisible in the Workplace Gender Equality Agency data, when we know that the pay gap for them is likely to be higher. Truthfully, I'm at the very early stages of navigating these feelings as an adult and as a woman of colour in the workplace, and understanding what influence I might have personally to engage, support, and advocate for change. WeHi's grassroots advocacy groups like Aussie, We Pride, and the Disability and Neurodiversity Network, as well as the inspiring change makers like Dr. Fernando, gives me hope that the exclusion, absence, and marginalisation of underrepresented women will be a thing of the past, and that intersectional experiences of all women will be represented and celebrated. I have hope that organisations that prioritise diversity will recognise that a focus on intersectionality will result in increased innovation, better decision-making, and more inclusive and dynamic workplace culture. There has been some progress, but we collectively have a lot more work to do. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Fernando to share with us their thoughts on a pathway to innovation and inclusivity in Australia. Following Dr. Fernando's presentation, we'll have the opportunity to take questions from the floor and online. So feel free to submit your questions via Slido at any time. To wrap up the event, we'll invite you to join us on the stage for a special International Women's Day staff and student photo and afternoon tea in the Tapestry Lounge. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Fernando to the stage.
First and foremost, thank you very much for the institution for welcoming me and giving me this opportunity. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that we are meeting here today and pay my respects for any elders past, present, and emerging. Okay, what a perfect intro. I couldn't ask for anything better because, that was such heartwarming and just a personal experience. That's kind of my drive to do what I'm doing, and I'm sure there are plenty of others as well. So, what we wanted to see, the change, we are hearing the change that we want to see. So that's such a perfect intro. Okay. Before I begin, I just wanted to say one thing. I am for everyone. I want to be supportive of each and every individual if I'm able to, at least the people that I'm surrounding with. It's not just people, the animals, the planet, because I am a human lover. I love nature and everything. But in terms of today's address and the work that I'm focusing on, because there is a kind of a mission or a vision for someone to really achieve something. So therefore, I have narrowed my area of thinking and the way I wanted to work on to bring equity to the world. So therefore, my special focus is on women It doesn't say that I'm biased over men or non-binary individuals. It's just that there is a gap and I'm fixing a gap. So therefore, my work is towards that. And because it's International Women's Day, we are making this kind of discussion because there is a problem that we are facing across the world and also in Australia. Okay, so but we wanted to address this challenge because we are STEM people over here. We understand sciences and we understand how Australia really need to leverage because we cannot rely on our fossil fuels or any other else. Because it's such, damaging the whole, the environment and nature. And looking at that, what we wanted to really see is how we can bring this human potential, right? And especially with all the newest technology, including AI and everything, we see this is what it is, which is most critical too. Organizations like Nokia or, Kodak really failed miserably, being like the toppest in the leaders in their kind of specialization, but failed miserably because they were unable to innovate. So innovation is crucial. So therefore, that's the discussion today. So we are seeing the priority why we wanted to do what we do through inclusivity within Australia. I am a very kind of an open and a blunt speaker. So if I go over 20 minutes, just give me a nudge. Yeah. Okay. So starting with innovation, it's a process where we wanted to innovate some new service or a good or to really elaborate or really make it better, a service or a good. In this process, one of the key elements that I mentioned earlier is diversity. That's one of the crucial things that we need to aim at this day and age for all the right reasons. There are mounds and mounds of research proving this. There is practical application, practical studies within the industry, across all industries on this matter. But in particularly for STEM, this is even much important because we need to innovate in a much more aggressive manner. End of the day, we all are looking for to be above our competition, right? In whatever the fields that we are working on to, as the end outcome maybe to, enhance the human race or to be, supportive of each other. But we need to understand priority is diversity for innovation. But what we need to understand is what is diversity. So these are the three categories of diversity that you would see in the world, right? And, in terms of legacy diversity is where you are kind of what you're born with, your gender, your race, your ethnicity, sexual orientation, ability, all of that. Then you accumulate with your experience a level of diversity, right? What you are being exposed to, right? And that's the second category. And then how you think, right? That's the other thought sort of diversity. So all of these, now you can imagine, it's so hard to really narrow down someone and understand which category that they belong to, But though that we say that, if we ignorantly exclude this understanding, we are in a critical problem. That's what the problem we are facing at the moment. Right? We created a world mainly for men at the initial stage. Now we are trying to, we have started including women for some years ago, but still we are. Just to say, there was a recent information because Ayan and I worked in transportation. For 2022 was the first time a woman dummy was used for crash projects, right? So just imagine, never the seatbelt was made for us. Neither to fit our bodies or to kind of see the journeys that we go through as women during our journey, life journey. None of that was considered ever, right? So likewise, there are significant challenges in all domains, in products, in services, that we really need to challenge just in terms of gender, but we can't stop there because we are people of all of these different forms of diversity. We belong into them, and therefore, when they are being compounded, it's what we call as intersectionality. But before we go there, I'll give you a little bit of a picture of what we are facing, mostly little about the world, but mostly about Australia, right? So we have 36% of university STEM enrollment as women. From that, only 15% of university qualified jobs are held by women, right, from that 36. And then women in STEM in the workforce is currently 27%, right? Now, looking at these statistics, of course, we need to attract more girls because it's 36, it's not 50%. We need to focus on that. But can you see there's a huge gap within that 36, only 15% really work in the current STEM ecosystem, right? So that says volumes, right? Our workplaces, whatever it is, academic, non-academic, all of that is not supportive of women who have really spent 3 years, 4 years perfecting their craft in STEM, are not really welcomed to be there, right? And then ultimately, as a larger portion, generally in the STEM ecosystem in Australia, only 27%. So we should accumulate for 50% or somewhere close to that. So this is what we are facing at the moment. And now recently there was a announcement there is 22% pay gap in Australia for men and women across all industries. And in the world, it says, like the World Economic Forum, it will take 131 years to come into gender parity with pay, right? So I'm giving first the holistic view of women because it's sometimes challenging to really extract the intersectional data because that's not something I don't know whether they don't have it or they don't necessarily present or, it's challenging as well because intersectionality and diversity is huge. It's like men and women are, two factors. So that cumulative information over there. And then in terms of leadership, then you can see only 8% CEOs represents from the leadership roles in the STEM qualified industries and 23% of senior management positions held by STEM industries. So you can see there's a pipeline problem. Starting from that schooling to university and then acquiring a position and staying in the position, getting to leadership, it's very same in entrepreneurship as well, right? Funding in terms of funding for women-led entrepreneurs, and then in terms of the support or their representation. I don't want to say these things, none of these things, as challenges, because I see an opportunity. If you see this data, you will see that as well. So we are stopping women participating in Australian economy. It's a $128 billion a loss, right? And what we are faced against is that by 2025, 90% of jobs will require STEM skill. STEM is such broad, right? Especially with technology, basically now it's so little that excludes STEM, right? So therefore, the demand for STEM qualifications, demand for people with STEM skills is huge, right? And it has been never less, right? Never less, but it's increasingly needing more. And by 2030, we need 1.2 million additional tech workers in Australia. Right? And 1 in 4 board have no women at the moment, right? No women at all. So why I see these as opportunities because we can fix these gaps, isn't it? Can't we have more women involved in the boards? Can't we take action, really immediate action, 5 years plan? Do we really have to wait 131 years? Is it is it a KPI that you should set? You can't achieve within your lifetime. Right? As anyone in the audience who can make decisions, you should be able to make a point of 5 years. Of course, work requires time and change requires time, but these are attainable goals, right? Starting with the 36 women that we have already who have studied STEM, we should employ all of them because we are not, we need, we are only 27% in women, right? So these are things are attainable and possible, right? So therefore, I see all of these facts as opportunities, right? Moving forward, I talk a little bit of intersectionality. Now, what intersectionality means is when you are having multiple level of, so the gender is talked very openly, and of course, it's the most priority, right? But all of us have different other segments of identification, which we talked earlier. And with that, we mount ourselves. So if you have two segments of identification, then you have double jeopardy. If you have three, then it becomes more and more and more, right? So specifically, the factors on the the ones that we are kind of born with are the most significant ones are race, gender, sexual orientation, and then ability, disability, or ethnicity. All of those are the most critical ones, and especially age, right? All of that kind of, including gender, are the most critical ones. And when they compound, it's really challenging. I'll just give a small understanding, because we are talking about equality, because Australia is a first world country, and therefore we strive to be equal. That's important. But before getting there, I'm sure you all have seen, or if you haven't, just Google equity and equality, just those two words, and you'll get a very famous picture, like three people standing on it, right, and trying to weave a stadium or a ground. And there's a tall person, and you're being equal, giving 3 boxes to every one of them, doesn't serve purpose, basically to none. Because it's not everyone is at the equal play field at the moment, right? So Australia, being such diverse, right, apart from those other individual characteristics, race and ethnicity is a significant portion of Australia. Because 50% of Australians are either born overseas or at least one of their parents being born overseas, right? And then the First Nations people, then again, they are being so neglected, right? And that is also a racial aspect over there. So all of this, if you really consider, before we strive for equality, we need to get the equity, right? And in order to do so, we need to really understand this, right? So this is just an example that I've given, like putting a shirt out there, right? This is a famous understanding. So whether you are giving everyone the same shirt, does it make sense if it doesn't fit, right? Diversity is we need different shirts, right? To begin with, we need to understand that. Then we need to accept, right? That we all wear different types of shirts. And equity is giving the one that they need, right? And then belonging is that you have that freedom, right, to wear what you want, the shirt that you want, and go, right? So this is what we want to achieve, and through intersectionality only, we can really make that happen. Okay. Now I'll come to some of the interesting statistics, especially on the work that I am really interested. So, looking at these statistics, because I arrived in Australia for my PhD, and I was surprised, honestly, because I'm a researcher in AI, and I cannot call myself a researcher anymore because I'm not attached to a university, but I'm a researcher by heart, but entrepreneur by trade, kind of. When I was doing my PhD, I just saw my AI colleagues who were just kind of finishing off and all of that. Being AI, they couldn't find work. And it really struck me. Of course, we cannot have all PhDs working in the university as lecturers. And that shouldn't be the case, neither their passion too, right? And industry, wherever I see, they're seeking for women, and especially like such demanding courses, student, like with such skills, you can't find work. They were brilliant than me. I really couldn't really figure out why. And then as I digged in, what I could see is, of course, Australia has spent billions and millions on this for years and years. But what I could see is, I couldn't find data about how much we are at that time in 2017, none. But wherever I go, being the passionate person, I went to a lot of events in my specialization, tech and AI and all of that. I could see so many women, brilliant women who have come from overseas, doing their PhDs, done their masters, all sort of people, so with skills, and even men too, really struggling to find work. And we are constantly saying, we need more tech workers, we need AI people, can't we find them? This is the conversation in the outside world. I couldn't figure out what's the gap. Because if there is a demand and a supply, we shouldn't have a problem. We should, the market should settle down at the equilibrium, right? So was not necessarily happening. So that's when I could see the intersectionality. It was one of the main challenges, especially with the race and the ethnicity matter. So that's why that I started doing what I did with STEM Sisters. It was never about, I should say this, because sometimes people do charities, non-profits, when they go through challenge within their own selves. I didn't face that. I have faced many challenges over the years, not that I'm saying in that terms, but it's not something that I had a flourish career during my PhD. I had a bad experience before I began at VU, but at VU I had a very, very truthful experience. I got my PhD scholarship from CSRO. I worked with the Department of Transport. I was teaching at Victoria University. I was a richer student than where I still have been an entrepreneur, honestly. So I had a really flourishing career during my 4 years of my PhD, but it didn't come through because I necessarily faced challenges, but I saw a problem that it really was facing challenges, by my colleagues, my friends who I associate, I know of. And I thought I started just because not to help them in any other way, to give them STEM skills or teach AI or none, just to come together, share your struggle where you're in. Because the time that I was seeing them, they were internalizing the problem, thinking there's something wrong in me. This is why I'm not getting the job. This is why I am being, let down. Right? So I didn't want them to have that because it demeans your confidence so badly, and then you can't push yourself out there. So we just came together to talk, right? And then we say, if something works well for someone, we used to share that with the other. Oh, I got a breakthrough here. Oh, I used LinkedIn, I did this, and this worked. I could make a connection. This led me to an internship, or this led me to this. That was the purpose initially, right? So looking at these statistics, this came out in 2020. We had just before COVID, there was a conference in Adelaide by the, I think, Visual Institute, also one of the gold nominees of gender equality. So with that, after that report, I think there is a report due this year. So this particularly say, because we didn't have this information, comparing to women who are born in Australia and women born in overseas, if you see so we are 56% out of Australian women. These are women who have called Australia home. They are not international students or temporary visa holders. If you include them, the numbers would be much higher. But in comparative to this, if you can see, the unemployment rate for people arrived in 2006 was 5%, right? And in 2006 to 16, it increased to 14.1, right? So it's a huge, because it was never addressed, never seen. These people come with excellent skills. Sometimes some multinationals, even Australia, have never heard of, but they have worked maybe from, being in different other countries, and then they come here, their experience are not valid. Like physics is no longer physics in Australia. Like, you ask, why, how does physics differ, So that was some of the challenges that we see, right? So this was, when this came out, I knew what I was doing, but still this was the, what do you say, the top, the cherry on the pie or the cherry on the cake, having some statistics to back what I'm saying, with this, but this came in 2020, but at that time we had a lot of our initiatives. So I'll just talk you through. So STEM Sisters, what I do mainly, this is what I started, is to address the intersectional challenges faced by women of color in STEM. When we say women of color, we necessarily don't want to, it's not based on color. It's, we basically open arms to anyone who you feel like they want our help. We don't provide any STEM skills support, but we are all focused on these challenges. So these are the pipelines challenges that we have seen. So we say them as a leaky pipeline. These are the main challenges that we have seen, and these are the solutions that we have implemented to address them. So again, as I said, remember diversity. Calling women of color, there is so much diversity within us. So just running the mentoring program isn't sufficient, right? Because someone would really kick off from that. Got a great mentor, had a perfect experience, got the boom. It's now, you're not unstoppable, right? But it's not for everyone. Sometimes it's not that experience would change you. Sometimes it's the magnify. We are giving them an opportunity to, we showcase them as much as we can through our Magnify. It's a magazine. We do it every quarter. It's all about women's stories, not just women who are very on top, just who are going in the journey, who have just started, volunteers, all sort of people. We have different other events and workshops. We have something called Dress to Express and BU program. It's about addressing, because being women, it's not a norm, but women tend to become loving fashion and all of that. But then you have a cultural identity. How do you really mix that? She was talking about how the makeup really affected you, right? And so this is what we do, because it's a fun loving, but we do it with a social cause involved, because we can't talk fashion without sustainability. So that's an interesting project if you wanted to find out. We have our mentoring program. We have our ambassador programs. None of this, I will assure you, none of this, there is no other solution. I don't know whether it's, when we started, there was no other solution in the market. There were ambassador programs. They were not open to only for permanent residents or citizens, right, for STEM women. There were mentoring programs, but they were not given, of course, any mentor can really support if they are really willing to, but someone who have been in your shoes understands your problem. So you having a mentor who have another woman of color who are at least few steps above you would really give the advice how they have navigated those challenges. So there were none like that, right? A magazine, right? Just to focus, because we could see 56% of university qualified STEM women are women who are born overseas. Only very recently you see, at least in an advertisement, a brown or a black or someone else sort of a scientist being portrayed or talked about. There were very few who had earlier opportunities. So that's what we focused on, right? The visibility aspect. Soapbox science, that's why we say we are, so inclusive. Because Soapbox Science it's not one of our STEM Sisters initiative, but we are the partners to have this event in Melbourne and Sydney. We have been doing in Melbourne last 2 years, and we just announced the 2024. It's a science public outreach event, right? But this one, the organizers, because when we sign up, we can only have it, STEM Sisters can only run it in Melbourne. So to be inclusive, as the organizers have their eligibility criteria, it's open for women and non-binary individuals. Though we are organizing it, that's the way. Because rest of it, why we do particularly for women of color, because there is a gap, there is a challenge, it's not equal at the moment, right? We need to fix that gap. But being Soapbox Science, it's an science communication opportunity. We don't want to miss anyone out on the organizations, Soapbox Science UK's, they allowed us to do where we wanted it, but still we have opened up for everyone to be inclusive, including non-binary individuals. Moving on, these are some of the I don't know what I did. Okay, yeah. So some of the awards STEM Sisters have won. Apart from that, I'm also part of 2 other organizations because STEM Sisters is my passion, but because I've now taken an entrepreneurship path, I wanted to secure myself financially, but also doing a social good. So I'm taking one notch up. It's not just me, including Dr. Molly Muse. She's also one of my good friends, and another woman in engineering, in the renewable energy space. We both together, we are iSTEMco, so we provide consultancy, talent sourcing services for organizations. So these 2 organizations directly, strongly work with the industry, but this is for all women, but we understand certain challenges faced by marginalized women, so we support them on we understand those challenges, so therefore our solutions are unique to them. Going on, we saw there was certain huge problem of getting in people is a recruitment bias. We all have bias. So in order to, when we face that, how do we really use technology to mitigate? Me being an AI researcher, so this is something that we are already working on. We have a prototype at the moment. It's functioning. There are a lot of companies who are with us working with it, but we are currently doing a further upgradation on there. So it's hides your identity completely. It's for women in STEM because, again, there is, a gap to be filled for all women in STEM. But what we do is we hide your age, your name, all the detail up till the point of interview. Of course, then that will be revealed, your identity, but up to the point you're being judged only for your qualifications and for your expertise. So we have seen great action to it. Now, in terms of, I'll take a few more minutes because I really want to talk on this. So call to action from today's, right? For women and for others, I just wanted to make sure, for women, I would say, first of all, don't be scared to be you, right? It's so important that you do that. Any challenge you come across, face them headstrong, right? That's the only way we really can, tackle some of these challenges. For that, you need to really empower yourself, right? And the other thing I would say, support other women. That's what I called my first organization, STEM Sisters. I don't see sufficient, don't get me wrong on this International Women's Day, but I don't see women being supportive of other women too much. I do understand we have faced lot of challenges, lot of discrimination. And sometimes our supervisor was like this, our manager was like this. You be the person to stop that chain. Don't give it to the next person to move on, right? So, and have a girls group or have good friends with you and really authentically support them. It's so important. Speak up, right? For yourself, and for your community. That's important. People need to be heard so that they understand what are the challenges that you face. And take charge, right, in your life, in your career, right? And then prioritize self-care, because as women, we have to go through a biological, a journey throughout our life. So it's important that we prioritize that as well. For others, everyone who are here, I know you can, I'm a humanitarian, but also looking at these inequalities across the world for women, for gender and all of that, there is a significant change we can see. Even you are from any gender, be non-binary or male, be a feminist, because the world will improve, right? By supporting women. That has been seen, right? Their decision-making, their nurturing is something that is born with. And I'm not saying that you don't have it in men or don't have it in non-binary individuals, but this is something that is kind of up and going. So you choose, I'm not saying, you choose, you think about this. So be a feminist if you can, right? But at least definitely be an ally, right? Be an ally, even if it's not your experience. Be a listener. Think about, understand what someone can go through and be a genuine ally to support it, right? Challenge the bias. Men can do quite a lot. Other non-binary individuals can do quite a lot. If you see a woman being challenged or they're being uncomfortable, don't just be the person just to kind of, of course you may not participate in that discrimination or the bullying, but if you don't speak, what you are being part of is being supportive of this indirectly, right? What I want to say is, for everyone saying all of that, change is possible. As I said, we don't have to wait 133 years to fix any problem. It's not a goal. It shouldn't be one, right? We all, if we really make a choice, act upon it, we can change the world, right? At least our surrounding, and that will compound to change the world. And this is where you can find me. And I'm less on other social media, but more on LinkedIn. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fernando. What a call to action. I'd now like to hand over to Emily Erickson to kick off our Q&A session. Emily is a Senior Research Officer in the Mueller Lab and the co-chair of OSSE, the Overseas Staff and Student Engagement Group. Welcome, Emily.
Thanks, Sejal, and hi, everyone. So before we start the Q&A session, I'm just going to take a few moments to tell you about OSSE and what we do. So OSSE began in 2021 with the aim to celebrate cultural diversity within the Institute. And we organize events, meetings, and also advocacy, where we bring together the international and local Australian community within WEHI. And we do this to raise awareness of different traditions, languages, and cultural practices. So as Dr. Fernando highlighted today, we believe that workplaces who support and foster cultural diversity create organizational cultures where people are more open-minded, respectful, creative, and are better to embrace change and innovation. So if you're interested in joining OSSE mailing list, where you can stay up to date with different news and events, please go to Catalyst to sign up. And also another important announcement is that I think it's next week, on the 18th of March, we have the Cultural Diversity Week, where we will be hosting an international arts and culture show. And there will also be afternoon tea and activities to follow. So I invite you all to drop in at that celebration of this rich cultural diversity that we have here at WEHI. And also, if you need more information, have a look at Catalyst. So I'd like to now ask Dr. Fernando back to the podium, and we can start our Q&A session. Thank you. Okay. So I think we're going to alternate between a few questions on the floor and then also online questions. So any questions from the audience? Don't be shy. Okay.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Dr. Fernando. That was a really wonderful address. I work in the People and Culture team, and specifically interested in what you were saying. Sorry, I can't remember the name of the AI platform of recruitment that you're working on. We run a de-identified recruitment before, and we've run into some issues where it comes to publications, because of course people's names need to be on them, and that's part of assessment often for especially postdoctoral positions. And I'm just interested in your view on how potentially this platform might address that, and would be interested in any ideas you have actually as well. So yeah. Thank you.
So, so to get it right, you're asking their names are already there in the application. So how do you hide them? Is it?
No, not the application. That's relatively easy to hide. It's really the publications from research. So when you publish,
okay, I got you. Yes, yeah. So that's where you can use AI. So it's not just a name, any sort of identification. So initially when we did there, it was not necessarily AI backed so much because we were doing a trial and a bootstrapping. We are just very early scale and doing all of this together at the same time. So we use some, I actually, I have some skills. So I just did some of the work, but we didn't necessarily use strongly AI because we want to really get the case right and see whether the employers are really up for it, whether we'll have a journey with this and all of that. So just hiding the name is not sufficient, because if a human goes through, like especially with overseas qualifications or things like that, if a foreign university name pop-ups, then you are given the identity in another form of a way. So in terms of public, so what you can do is, academia can be a little tricky in terms of how that it would be managed. But we still, I think, like what we have done for foreign university qualification or anything that we specify as names, we identify that using AI first. So we put a, case overlapping, and we identify that. And by case, we have really, to avoid them. And so we cannot replace it with anyone. So what I would suggest understand in the academic sense that I know of, the best thing is to use by only the publication, right? And the ranking, or maybe the ranking of the paper or things like that. So you don't necessarily need to get into, if the person is the first author, I think that matters because your name popping up as a third or the fourth or as a collaborative author, or it's a paper of your own. So if you only pick those up, right? And then forget about the institution, the remaining rankings that your practice in your field, consider them. I think you have a holistic picture of the value of that person would bring. So there are ways you need to tweak for the purpose. So for academia, I think there should be a significant shift over that aspect, because we face the same problem mostly in the industry, because when even the name is being hidden, you write about, something of your culture, or talking about a foreign university name, you're kind of giving your identity in another form. So it's a little bit tricky in academia, but we can still work through. Technology is, I am a very positive believer of technology for using good. So as I said, I just was thinking about what your problem said and I thought about these solutions. But if you really sit down, I'm sure that we can come up with things better.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the floor? Online? Yep.
Yeah, we have one online. So, noting the disproportionate attendance today in terms of gender, at least online, how do we get more men to attend these events and have more ownership to be part of the solution? And that's from someone who's identified as a male here.
Okay, yeah, that's a wonderful question, and thank you for coming, and all the men and non-binary individuals who have come along to celebrate International Women's Day. But as I say, even how do I say? Because sometimes men really open up for these ideas when they think from the lens of their mother, of their sister, of their daughter, and they don't want to face these challenges by their loved ones. But that shouldn't be the way of thinking. You should be a person, thinking about your privileges and someone who don't have that. And what can you do? The first point, if you remember the shared story, is understanding that, right? Understanding, of course, I'm not perfect. I still learn about certain disabilities and health challenges certain individuals face. I still try to understand some challenges faced by non-binary individuals, right? We all have to learn. We all have biases. It's not the work that we are doing, or many other, people who like me who are doing, is not just to, pinpoint at you are doing something wrong, this is wrong. It's always, as a human race, I think we are educated, capable enough to move forward from whatever the point. If it's an organization, if you have done something wrong, of course, please apologize, because that's the first place to start, and acknowledge that something went wrong, right? But then, everyone can move forward from that point, whatever the challenge is. The discussion and the open, so it's a call to action to everyone in terms of saying how we can have more men involved. We can't force upon people to change, but I think as we speak openly, right? So if you are a man over, any men over here, or non-binary individual, if you see any sort of discrimination happening to anyone, just don't be silent. Right? I'm not saying to be aggressive or do anything, but if you see honestly a discrimination is going on, don't be the silent person, because silence is also part of giving away, to the person who is doing wrong or the bully. So it's important whether you go in a tram or a train or any for that matter, and especially in workplaces, because that's the most hardest, in a way, not that others are not, but when you face those kind of challenges. So I welcome everyone to really be open, maybe try to bring or have that dialogue or the conversation, but it's it's their choice as well, but I will hope for the best.
Okay, thank you. And yep, a question over there. The online people need to hear it, so please wait.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for a really interesting presentation. I have 2 teenage daughters. One loves STEM. The other could think of nothing worse than doing anything related to STEM. I'm interested to know your thoughts on, in terms of getting more women into STEM workforce.
Yeah.
How do you think we could support our young girls and women in STEM direction without sort of disregarding their natural inclination? Thanks.
I honestly believe, I'm not an expert in child psychology, but I honestly believe gender is very neutral at the very early stage, right? It's a neutral, unless that we put any form of general stereotypes on children, they are very kind of, on a neutral basis. So it's up to the society. Again, it's awareness and how much we do really engage. But I would say at the same time, if the mothers who have studied STEM or the aunties who have studied STEM or your sister who have studied STEM is one of the people who have studied, which is part of the 36, and which is our part of the 85 who is not in STEM, I'm sure it's very hard to perceive the young daughter or that niece or anyone to be part of STEM. Because we need to really change this toxic work culture in STEM. That's critical. Right? But in terms of influencing, going back, so that's critical to remember. It's because we have pouring money, Australian government, large institution, to work on this problem. There has been some incremental, as I said, people, it's like 36, it's not bad. We still, we need to improve, definitely, yes. But we need to also think why they are not influenced. Once they study to be there, when you have all of these opportunities, there's a huge demand for them, right? And they can be part of this STEM journey, but they refuse to. So it's hard to really, because sometimes when we ask for young girls to go in schools and teach, we don't want to say the toxic nature of, work culture, because we would really take them off. Honestly, and with the new generation, the women who have been here, my age or previous, or, based on the ethnicity or different cultures that you come from, we have been tolerating so much and we are kind of attuned to it. The young generation is not necessarily that, which is good, which I love, right? They would take it and they would speak about it, they would put it on social media, and they wouldn't necessarily take that if nothing is going to change. Right? So it's important that we address this problem of STEM for women or gender equality, all of that is a top-down and a bottom-up process. We need to attack the problem from top very, very strongly, aggressively, so that we pertain this, remove these challenges and really open the doors. But at the same time, then we can push forward from bottom. But in terms of as mothers, as society, if we can really, because STEM is, the way how I see the world moves with STEM, it's of course, we have the difficult theorems and all of that, but with technology, AI and everything, what matters is really, I believe, is human creativity, which is really comes to diversity in end of the day. So if you can harness your creativity within inside without putting any prejudice over them or stereotypes over them, and really harness and give yourself or the children that you have or the young girls that you see to blossom them, I'm sure there will be a lot in STEM. Because that's the part to really, I'm not saying other industries, as I said, 90% of industries are STEM now. So therefore, it's only very 10% which is not STEM. So in that case, if you foster creativity, right, I think they'll be in STEM in that way. So if you wanted to really encourage young people, don't put any bias over them. Don't say, what you can do and you can't do, what has worked and has not worked. In my journey, I have seen things that I never expected. Even being an AI researcher, I thought ChatGPT will come in another 5 years, not last year. So with this technology increment, what is possible is just huge. So just giving that opportunity for them to blossom, their creativity is, I think, the key to really encourage them.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fernando. Very important points to think about. I think in interest of time, we'll probably end the Q&A session here, and I will hand over to Sejal to close the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily, and to our audience for those thought-provoking questions. Dr. Fernando, thank you for sharing your expertise with us today. You've given us tremendous insight into how we can validate and overcome the very real struggles of women of colour in STEM and beyond. I now invite our audience to send feedback about today's event. We'll also post the link on Catalyst. All participants will go in the running for a $50 Readings Carlton book voucher, and you have until next Friday, 15 March, to participate. So this brings us to the close of our International Women's Day event. Thank you so much for joining in person and online. You're invited to enjoy afternoon tea in the Tapestry Lounge provided by the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre, who provide food influenced by flavours and traditions of their diverse staff who have sought refuge in Australia. If you'd like to participate in the official WeHi International Women's Day group photo, please join me on stage. Thank you.